have a feeling that inside you somewhere there's something nobody knows about.
Something nobody knows?
Something secret and wonderful, and I'll find it out.
Shadow of a Doubt is a classic film directed by Alfred Hitchcock starring Teresa Wright and Joseph Cotten. It's about a teenage girl named Charlie who discovers that her beloved uncle, also named Charlie, is a serial killer and has to wrestle with the choice to expose him or hide his true identity. For the sake of clarity, Charlie the teenager will be referred to as Young Charlie, and Charlie the murder uncle will be referred to as Old Charlie. I think this was the first Hitchcock film I saw in its entirety. I've seen The Birds, but I think I missed the beginning of it, so I consider Shadow of a Doubt to be my first real Hitchcock film. And I really liked it. It was very captivating, and it really felt like each scene was deliberately planned out and given purpose, which matches up with what I've heard about Alfred Hitchcock and how meticulous he is in planning and directing his movies. I like how the characters of Young Charlie and Old Charlie are juxtaposed or mirrored in the film. Old Charlie is really cynical about the world and about people, which is kind of reflected in Young Charlie at the beginning when she's contemplating the tediousness of her life and her family. But really, Young Charlie is an idealist. You can see that so clearly when comparing her statements and demeanor to Old Charlie. She obviously idolizes her uncle in the beginning, and there's such a big shift by the end of the movie when she literally recoils at his touch. I also think there's never a time when I was not suspicious of Old Charlie, and when I think about it, I think it was because of the actor Joseph Cotten's skill in having this underlying shiftiness that's masked by sincerity. Now I think it's a combination of both the acting as well as the way the story unfolds, especially with that beginning. I think that the movie would be quite different if we didn't have the opening scene when Old Charlie is at his home on the East Coast and we see him be super shady. Having that scene right at the beginning really set my perception of who Old Charlie is, and that influenced how I saw him throughout the whole movie. It reminds me of something that Hitchcock has said about how to generate suspense. Let's say that people are talking at a table and someone has placed a bomb underneath. If you don't let your audience know about the bomb's existence beforehand, it's a surprise when it explodes, but it's only a surprise and nothing more. You can make the whole scene more engaging and more suspenseful by letting only the audience know about the existence of the bomb. So there's more tension that goes into watching the scene because the audience knows about a danger that the characters are oblivious to. It's like you want to reach out and tell them, but you can't, so you're stuck with this dreadful anticipation of the final outcome. Old Charlie, or at least Old Charlie's true nature, is the bomb here. We know that he did some bad things and that he will do something again, but my fear and suspense was only heightened by the fact that barely anyone could see through that facade. They were so trusting of him that it seemed like he could get away with anything without consequences, and that's really scary. I think another thing contributing to the suspense was the anticipation of a murder. We never truly get confirmation that Charlie is the murderer. It's just heavily implied through a lot of subtext and indirect statements. So I kept expecting him to murder someone, and especially young Charlie, after seeing all those suspicious attempts on her life. There's this dread that builds over time, just wondering what he's going to try next, or when he'll actually be able to hurt Charlie. But she's still okay by the end of the movie, when Old Charlie is going away on the train, and at that point it feels like maybe she'll be okay, and maybe she'll escape from her uncle. That made it so surprising for me when he tried to throw her off the train at the very end of the movie, because I think at that point I felt comfortable in thinking that we were close to the end, and beyond the point in time when Old Charlie could have killed her. So it was really surprising to see his final attempt to kill Charlie, and even more surprising to see that it would actually be Old Charlie who falls off the train and dies. The ending of the movie is kind of a mix between satisfying and unsatisfying, because it's great that young Charlie's fine and Old Charlie can't hurt anyone anymore, especially after it's implied that he would have killed that widow going to SF. But it's also kind of infuriating that no one will know that Old Charlie was a murderer. I also like the duo of the father and his friend when they talk about murders and stuff. His friend is a good guy, especially after he literally saved young Charlie from suffocating in the garage, and I think it's so funny that they came up with these elaborate ways to kill each other, like with mushrooms or hidden poisons, when there's an actual killer with them in the house, and he kills people in kind of the crudest of ways by strangling them with a belt or by pushing them off a moving train. Oh, the irony. I really do like this movie, so I'm giving it 3 sharks. And the lesson I'm taking away from it is that sequence and dramatic irony can have a big impact on how people interpret movies. I keep thinking back to that opening scene and how that alone just sets up so much about old Charlie that prevents me from trusting him throughout the movie. That also ties in with dramatic irony, which I was talking about a bit earlier, when the audience knows something that the characters don't. There's a lot of tension generated from using these two elements in tandem, and it seems really effective for engaging an audience.
Sing at the table, your merry crazy husband. Superstitions have been proved 100% wrong.